Well, Brittany, thank you so much for taking your time for this. As we start, can you talk maybe a little bit about your current role and your background?
Sure. So I am currently the BISO, or Cardinal Health, and BISO stands for Business Information Security Officer. What my role does is essentially we're the bridge from the security side into the business world. So we kind of help prioritize risk, as well as we do some education and information security awareness back to the business.
I understand. I understand. And can you maybe talk about your story? How did you get into cybersecurity?
Okay, so I kind of ended up here when I was going to college. I had all these big dreams. I was going to do computer engineering, electrical engineering, minoring in math, and then I went to college and decided college was a little bit more fun. So I actually ended up kind of changing my career path a little, and I got involved with ROTC as part of just a way to get healthy and do exercise. I was like, I'm going to have these exercise buddies. And I generally take random classes. And as part of that, I found out that I really liked it. And so I had kind of a change of career path and decided I was going to go into the military after college.
Interesting.
Yeah. So as a part of that, when I joined as kind of an IT professional in what's called the Signal Corps for the Army.
Mhm.
And it was because of that what got me interested in security. We would obviously have to secure those communications. We would understand how we need to talk. And that's kind of what led me down the path of security ultimately.
Interesting. Well, it's interesting to hear stories of different paths. Some people switch from IT to cybersecurity, but it's awesome. And as you can imagine, cybersecurity in general just exploded in importance for all the various different reasons. And as kind of more and more people are probably more junior professionals are trying to make the transition, or maybe when college students, they're kind of looking at cybersecurity field to make a career. From your vantage point, from your experience, what would you recommend they spend their time on and focus on?
You know, I think that's such a great question because there are so many facets of security, right? From auditing to more of the technical roles, your incident responders, your red teams with pen test, application security. There's so many different realms of security that I think one of the most advantageous things to do is to get out there and network. If you think that you like this certain field, ask about it, follow people, see what they're doing. And then additionally, depending on your personality type, if you like fast movement, but you had big businesses like a Microsoft or a Cardinal Health or a large business, those are going to be generally hard to see those changes quickly. So looking at some of the smaller companies might be better for you. If you're more process oriented, it may be a bigger company. So I think by networking, you start to understand like where your personality fits into some of this, and you understand like what are the functions of these different roles. So I would absolutely say get out there, follow people passively. When you have questions, reach out and ask.
Interesting. It's actually an interesting take because I think a lot of people kind of bring up the fact there's so many different things you can do, red team, blue team, kind of education of users is a big part of it. But also what you bring up, I think it's a very interesting point that it's not just the variety, but also the velocity of change, which changes with the size of the company and kind of their growth trajectory, which I think is it's pretty awesome. It's almost like in the beginning, you probably want to do something that changes faster, so you get to sample different things, and probably in a small organization, you get to wear many different hats and kind of tech and turn as the org expands, rather than something that's much bigger organization that may not change as swiftly.
Yep, absolutely. And some of those big organizations are able to hyper focus and really become the subject matter expert. In the smaller companies, you get to have a flavor of all different varieties of security. So both have their benefits. It's just
absolutely. So it makes sense to go for breadth in the beginning and then figure out what you like, what you're good at, and then do a deeper dive on one particular aspect of it.
Or if you're not a multitasker and there's just one aspect of security you're really into spreadsheets and utilization, like do that, go there. And as part of that, you'll have the opportunity to taste this and interact with people. But cater to your personality, cater to like what you gravitate to. You don't want to end up in a realm of security where you're just not happy, because there's so many opportunities out there.
For sure, for sure. And kind of switching gears, I think there's so many topics that are top of mind right now for cybersecurity professionals, like ransomware, cloud security, identity and access, phishing attacks, what have you. But let's say you have this crystal ball and it can see into the future, 12 months from now. What's some of the themes? What are some of the challenges everyone will be talking about and thinking about?
You know, we just talked a little bit about like the different flavors of security. And I think the first thing that kind of comes to mind is really the scope of security, because we're starting to see this grow and grow. And we've talked about IoT and OT. For me, being in the medical field, we have medical devices that we have to dig into. You're starting to see security being integrated in businesses, even if they're not technology companies. When we look at supply chain distribution, with the conflict that's kind of going on right now, right? Business are starting to ask, how am I impacted? How am I being secured? And so I think like that is going to be one challenge of how do we secure all the things, right? And how do we do that in a way where we can justify it or it makes sense? So it kind of transitions me into the second thought of, how are we going to quantify this to our board members? Because they're hearing about these things in the news, right? And they're like, hey, what do we got going on here? What's our resiliency plan? How are we standing these things up? And they want to hear that you have that plan there, that you have something in place. But they also don't want to spend too much money on it, right? They don't want to sink their business going all in on security. So it becomes this, and we've struggled in this area quite a while, of just quantifying risk and quantifying security risk in a way that like makes sense to the business, and being able to flex on that. So I think that will continue to be a struggle. And then maybe circling back to the original theme, when we talk about people looking to get in security, I think what we're seeing right now is a big talent management concern with, the great resignation happening and people are moving businesses. It kind of goes back to this personality type. We've had a lot of businesses where we see take this remote first stance. And so what does that mean? For us, it's a little bit easier to do that than some of the other places, but you're still going to be challenged to find that talent. And now the talent is going to demand a lot more. I think coming out of COVID, we were forced to kind of sit in a room or sit in a house, and we probably went through a lot of self-reflection. Maybe like had some downtime, maybe like reconnected with friends. But we probably came to a place where we understood what mental health meant to us and what we need to feel good as people. And I think moving on forward, especially in the immediate future, you're going to have people that are interested in, how do I maintain this positive headspace that I'm in now? Mental health has now become an important thing for me. How are you as a business supporting that? So I think like as we work through this talent management problem, and we've always said that there's a shortage in InfoSec, but now we need to compete with these other businesses across the country because we are moving to more of a remote first environment, and make sure that we're looking at our individual and making sure our programs can support that individual. So that way we have happy people that work for us and they're able to produce things that they probably wouldn't have been able to do if they would have been repressed or not happy in that current position. So I think talent management will continue to be something that we all kind of look at.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of people that I talk to, they view work from home only from an operational standpoint. Oh, we have a lot more environments to secure. We have to deal with different pieces of software. We deal with home office environment that may be connected to a network within the household, and God knows what kids are downloading, clicking on. So it creates a total different set of concerns. But it's interesting that you bring this up, that it's not just that, but also the fact that as businesses continue to evolve and adapt to existing, to changes in the way work is done and business is done, I think it's very important, especially in the sense of addressing the talent shortage, to make sure that people are first and everything else. So people's needs are taken care of in a robust way, so they're not kind of left. They don't feel they're left behind.
Yeah,
and they don't feel their needs are deprioritized versus something else.
yeah, and I think we've always wanted to be inclusive of our people and make sure that we're having the right team and we're integrating them, and they feel part of that environment and they feel part of the company, right? And so like we want them to feel good. And so how do we do that when we're now remote? How do we do that to make sure that we're respecting like the things that they value now? And so I think that will be an interesting conversation as we kind of look deeper into some talent management concerns that, you know, we've struggled with over the past couple of years.
Yeah, and the first point that you made, it's actually interesting because I think a lot of people bring it up that sometimes it's not always easy to talk to, senior C-level executives or the board that may not have the background in cybersecurity. So just how do you tell them the story to make sure that they can make this judgment call and they can make a good decision assessing risks and the outcomes and putting sufficient budget behind it. And it's a decision that's made with understanding of the implications and it's done from kind of the right place. And in that perspective, I think telling a story is important. And while you're talking about IoT and medical devices, the only thing I could think of is, I'm not sure if you saw this scene in Homeland when they're hacking, I think a pacemaker successfully. And to me, just that thing alone, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I think it's definitely not a situation you want to be part of.
Yeah, and I think honestly, good storytelling is really what helps you connect with that board member, to help you explain kind of the impacts and what that looks like. I feel like that is what touches people more than a bunch of numbers. Like, yes, we want the numbers and we want it to support it, but let me tell you from a personal standpoint, from a business standpoint, of how this would play out. What would be our considerations? And I think like that starts to bridge that gap there of, okay, these are numbers, or okay, this is a control, but what is the true event? What is the true story? And I love the people that can tell good stories can probably influence you to do just about anything.
Well, as long as it's coming from a good place.
That's right.
Excellent, love it. So again, switching gears, I know we're trying to do so many different things at Athena. It's kind of meant to be a community of cybersecurity executives that's more or less vendor free, and just a way to connect and share knowledge and succeed together. And sometimes we succeed in this effort, and sometimes we fall short. And kind of with this in mind, from what you've seen thus far, what do you think we do that hits the spot? What do you think we should stop doing if there is a thing, something that we should de-emphasize, I guess? And if there's something that's missing, what would that be?
You know, I think what I find unique and valuable is the visibility into some of these career opportunities, and also the visibility to see when new people take on new opportunities. I find that, one, as a security professional, I am not always going out there and looking what's available, right? I'm busy, I'm doing my thing. But it does provide you advantage and like knowing what's out there. It also is a personal happy feeling when you see someone get that next thing, you see them grow. And I think that kind of builds that networking connection that we have. The other thing that I think is good, it's not time consuming, we are required to be in all these meetings. Generally, like a lot of our networking is done through conferences or other larger meetings. And with this, you can you get your updates, but then you can say, okay, well, I want to reach out to this person, or I want to be a part of that. So you can kind of choose your own adventure here, right? Like, how much time do you have? Because sometimes I got a fair amount of time. Most of the time I have no time, but things are important to me, like those connections, reaching out, educating myself and building myself. So when I do have that downtime, I want to know about those opportunities that are out there. And what I think Athena does is they give you a good frequency. They let you know of the opportunities that are out there where you can get involved and you can reach out, but you don't have to spend time finding that information, right? It's delivered to you, you're aware of it, and you can go, yes, this speaks to me. I'm going to go out and invest my time there. Or like, I'm too busy. There's no way I can get to that right now. But there's no like demand on it, right? I didn't spend my time, energy focusing on that during a time where I'm investing a lot of time in other things. So it really kind of helps me balance and helps me grow without putting time demands on me when I don't have the time during certain periods.
It's actually very intentional, because I think there's so many sources, and the last thing we wanted to be is another annoying reminder or an alert. So it meant to be ambient, so it's there when you need it, but it's not in your face when you don't.
Yep. And I will tell you, I like those emails that come through are one of the emails I always read every week. And it may not be like when it comes in, because I may be doing 12 other things. But it's not one of the emails where I'm just like, oh, it's another email and I delete it. It's definitely one of those emails where every time it comes in, I make sure to glance through it real quick because it's condensed. And then move on from there, right? It's an action item or it's not. But it's very well put together and condensed in a way that like I can digest that information and then make a decision of, do I have time? Can I invest in something? Oh, so-and-so got promoted into this. Fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. And you mentioned networking, and I think a lot of our members, they want more of an opportunity to engage with their peers. But again, we're almost 1,500 members at this point. But they want to be able to ask a question and get real-time feedback. And we're kind of trying to figure out what will be the best way to structure this, so that, again, it's there when you need it, but it's not in your face and just another fire hose of content, and just totally not usable. And we're just trying to figure out what medium to choose, whether it's a Slack channel or an email group, or a web-based. I mean, the membership site probably is one of the options. What do you think would be our kind of most recent thinking? Is that we would put together cybersecurity professionals that are in the same industries who probably share, I know, healthcare and financial services. They have very specific needs that may be different from e-commerce, for example, or something else. And we want to do it in so that you would have like an ambient group of 24 of cybersecurity professionals in healthcare, pharma, biotech, and healthcare, that at any moment you can send a message, hey, this vendor, that vendor, RSA or RSA or Gartner. So and very quickly you can get feedback, not sending it to everyone and being not relevant. So that's just some of the things, but with an objective of not just being one-to-many kind of source and audience, which we're trying to in addition to that, create this sense of community where members can reach out to each other in a way that's kind of robust and useful. So along those lines, what are your thoughts?
You know, kind of sticking with the theme of like the one email that comes in, immediately kind of where my head goes is, if there were a forum area, right, and I could choose to go into the financial group, or I could choose that day to go in healthcare, because maybe I'm in healthcare now, but I'm really interested in getting into the financial segment. But I would enter in this portal of some sort. Then I have like, let's go back to the old days of chat rooms, right? And so I can pick my room I want to be in. And then in there, there's various topics, talent management, whatever the themes of the day are. And And that's where I could ask questions and get feedback or whatever. If we were going to have a meetup, it would be posted in there of like when we're going to meet up. But then on that one email that comes out every week, have a section that says like trending topics or upcoming meeting in one of these groups, and just link it to that place. Because when I have time, I can go in there. But when I don't have time, I'm not getting 12 emails about it.
Yeah. So it's asynchronous. So it's kind of the benefit of the email, but also a resource that's more or less permanent. They can go at your time when you have time to check it out.
Yeah. And I think that would be very advantageous in the aspect of like, if I wanted to do a cross industry, like, let me go ask this other industry if they're having the same problems, or like now I want to pivot and get more into the entertainment space. And like, I want to see if anybody's out there on the informational side or educational side or whatever, and ask questions to those people. So I can be engaged when I need to be, but disengaged when I have to focus on some other items.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. You can't see this, but I'm taking notes, and it's definitely something that we will try to integrate in the next version of the membership website, because I think it'll be awesome. And it speaks to our ethos, which is be useful but not annoying. So it's this asynchronous access to something that's relevant. I think it's really cool. Again, switching gears a little bit, there's so many different sources that we can get new information about emerging themes in cybersecurity. You have conferences like RSA or Black Hat or Gartner, various industry associations, websites, social media. Where do you usually go to learn about what's new and up and coming?
It really depends. There are like podcasts that I will tune into. I used to be on Twitter a lot. That's kind of tailored off. Like, I feel like the value of content has changed a little bit. But you can, like, I feel like my podcast, I feel like LinkedIn has a little bit. I find the people that I connect to are really great sources of information for us, since we're medical. HISAC is another one that kind of keeps us updated. And I'm lucky enough to have a threat team that's just digesting information, and I get updates all the time. So it's kind of hard not to fall back on them too.
Awesome. And as well, if you use all those sources, and then let's say there's a new emerging theme, and you know enough about the problem and you understand the category, and now you're looking at the universe of hundreds of vendors, and if you ask any of them, they will just totally go after it, trying to schedule a meeting or whatnot. Yep. Where do you get feedback? Is it G2 Crowd? Is it Gartner? Is it peers again? Is it current vendors? Like, where do you usually go to get this information, kind of background before raising a hand that you potentially may be interested?
Absolutely, my connections. So I have Slack groups with other CISOs. I have like HISAC has like another group where you can ask those kind of information. But absolutely, like, I'll reach out to my peers and say, what's your experience with this? And then kind of talk through like, what were the pain points? What went really well? What should I also consider? Is it really good at this one thing, or kind of good at all the things? But my peers generally have, for me, the best information, because it's unabridged. They kind of are honest about where it is and what was good for them and what wasn't. And everybody's got an opinion.
For sure, because it's well, at least they don't have a stake in the outcome, so they can give you something that is there is no kind of a hidden agenda or a hidden incentive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on that topic, I know as we talk to cybersecurity executives, a lot of them have very emotional reaction to kind of any topics related to vendors. Someone I recently talked to, they said, my phone is always on do not disturb. From 9 in the morning until Friday night, it's on do not disturb, and things like this. So and another said, I never ever respond to emails. If it's not on Slack, I'm not engaging. So but as from kind of your experience, is there one vendor where your experience was amazing? What is it that they did that made it work? And on the flip side, what is one thing that vendors or salespeople do that is just the most annoying thing ever?
So pre-sales, it's hard to say if there's something that they do well, because I feel like they all kind of do the same thing. I generally will click just delete, 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 until I have a need for a particular system, or I've had a need for a particular function or capability, then I will go hunt after it. I feel like the best thing that a vendor can do is to build a relationship, and keep that going. I'm generally not interested in the product all the time, but I want to know that, like, if I have a relationship, it's much easier. Same with my peers. If I have a question about a surrounding piece of something, I'm comfortable with you. Now I'll go out and reach out to you when I need you. So I think creating that personal connection is probably the best thing that you could do. And it may not pay off today, but at some point I'm going to need to look at a firewall. And so as long as we have a good relationship, then I know that I'm going to reach out to you. And I think like that carries too. So if they're in one job, don't tell the company, but like if they're in one job selling firewalls and they move to another job where they're selling SIMs, I'm going to reach out to them because I've had a connection with them, right? I'm going to trust their opinion. I'm going to want to engage with them because we've connected on some level. So I think like that translates job to job to job.
For sure. And that's kind of, if they've shown they respect your time and your choice on the kind of the tempo of this conversation, it's worthwhile to maintain it as they go from company to company. But again, on the flip side, you mentioned you delete, but what is kind of one thing? Is it the emails? Like what's one thing that's the most?
So I feel like there's two things. The first one is when they just send me a calendar invite. Never, ever, ever, ever send me a calendar invite just out of the blue. I've never met you. I don't know you. And now you've tried to block time out on my calendar.
Do people do that?
Oh yes. And that's a good way to get like permanently blocked. I will block your whole domain for that. Like just don't. Your company is not going to talk to me.
Way too aggressive.
I was just like, my time is so important and I don't have a lot of it. And so that is just egregious to me. Please don't do that. And I feel like the second thing is just the gimmicky things where it's like, here's a picture of my dog. I'm fine, your dog is cute, but it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Like if we had a relationship and like we bantered back and forth, we would get to that point where like maybe we could send each other gifts or whatever, but I don't know you and I'm not interested in your dog.
Awesome. Britney, thank you so much. Last question. We're trying to figure out what to do in June. So for you, is it, I may have asked the question, but is it RSA, is it Gartner, or neither?
I feel like it's neither. I think at the world that I'm at this point, unless there's a reason for me to physically be there, I'm probably not going to be there unless it's probably something local. I don't tend to gravitate to the bigger conferences. I say that, but I'll go to Black Hat. It just depends on like if there's a need to be there. And I think sometimes like it's a need to like connect with peers and meet back up and have those one-on-one conversations. But if there's a different way that I could do that, I generally will.
Awesome. Well, Britney, thank you so much for your time. I think this was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was great to see you. I'm glad we finally got around to setting this up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.